When we put the call out for audience submissions for Curious Brisbane, we were inundated with questions. But there was one in particular that kept popping up. It's had creative monikers such as the brown snake for its long, winding path and murky colour. And while they are similar lengths, London's River Thames is considered one of the cleanest in the world, but the same can't be said for the Brisbane River. While the experts agree on the reasons behind its murky colour, they disagree on whether it's always been brown and whether it can ever be blue. Let's start with the why and break it down into 3 simple reasons. By its very nature, the Brisbane River is brown because it's an estuary and influenced by the tide. Water flows from the catchment upstream, bringing sediment with it, and as the tide comes in from the opposite direction, it causes a lot of turbulence in the water, continually stirring up the sediment. Once the sediment is generated into the river, then you get this constant resuscitio of sediment just because of the nature of the river itself. Paul Maxwell, principal scientist at Healthy Land and Water, said. So the fine particles of dirt and mud that make up the sediment never get a chance to settle. Brisbane has changed dramatically since colonial settlement, and so too has the river. Erosion from legacy clearing over the last century and a half has caused destabilization in the water channel, increasing the amount of sediment. The city's heavy rains add to the sediment again as runoff from hard surfaces like roads and roofs enter the river. After storms, the river will appear browner than usual because of the extra dirt flushed into it by the rain. In the 1860s, work began to dredge the river mouth to allow big ships through to the city and beyond. The riverbed was just 1.5 meters deep, and it was possible to walk from one side to the other. By 1900, it was 6 meters deep, and now it's about 15 meters deep. Dr. Maxwell said the dredging exacerbated the tidal influence. Now, it's all the way up at Ipswich. So there's a significant change in the hydrology of the river. While the river is dirty, Dr. Maxwell stresses it's cleaner than it has been. Just because it's brown it doesn't mean it's polluted, or that it's dangerous necessarily for humans to contact. That's a legacy from when industry used the river as the city's drain. Historically, meatworks would dump fat and offal in the waterway. There was waste from fertilizer and paper plants. And Paul Maxwell said blanket factories were particularly bad offenders. They used to discharge the dye from the dye pits out into the river so you could tell the day of the week by the color of the river. Experts are split on this one. As we scanned the ABC archives, we came across a story from 1990 on the health of the river. As the reporter's voiceover remarked, they remember relaxing on clean, sandy beaches and swimming uninhibited by fears of pollution. Coastal engineer Jesper Nielsen said those reports were true. From an engineering perspective, if we reflect on how the river used to be before engineers essentially came in and changed it so much, it would have been blue, he said. Dr. Maxwell was circumspect.